which was one of the first grocery stores in the city, actually the first one to advertise in the Washington Informer back in 1964. So, and looking at the price of food compared to what it is today, it's just amazing. We appreciate their partnership as well and their support. And it's just interesting to see how we all have evolved over the years. Next up, we're going to talk to Dr. Shantella Sherman about our MLK special issue. Dr. Sherman, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Some of us, are still trying to maintain those New Year's resolutions. So we have to go to the special aisles in Safeway to make
Yes.
sure that we don't break that commitment to ourselves. But I am so happy again for what you were able to produce this week with our MLK special issue. We've been doing this now again for years, and the fact that you have taken this over. So, the theme for our Peace Walk in March was change begins with good hope and a dream, and that's on the cover. But you had another idea when you decided to put the theme together for this and for the supplement. So talk about that.
Again, when we start looking at Dr. King's messages, a lot of times we do a freeze frame in history where we're kind of stuck at the letters from the Birmingham jail or the March on Washington. And so we tend to forget that Dr. King had an amazing amount of sermons and speeches and just journal entries that we often overlook. And so one of the things that he often talked about, especially the mid 60s and into the close of his life, into this assassination, were issues that were surrounding identity and how we formulate identity and the concept of a false supremacy. And so when I came across that subject matter, he was actually doing a speech in 65 where he's talking about supremacy or false supremacy and the concept of the Emancipation Proclamation, the original one that was written. And he was doing a speech about the 100th anniversary of that original Emancipation Proclamation. And it just hit me that many of the things that he talked about almost read prophetic because these were things that we're now dealing with all over again today. Or perhaps we never stopped dealing with them. There's been a transition through the years of how false supremacies continue. And when he said false supremacies, he's talking about things like not just white supremacy, but there's certain people or certain areas or based on geographical location, that there's a bias that intrinsically we all inherit just by simply being here. And a lot of what we need to do is to push our way out of it in order to heal not only the outside world, but internally, the things that we need to address.
How were you able to? I mean, I know you're a researcher, you're a historian. That's why you have that DR in front of your name, and it certainly doesn't stand for Denise Rolark like my DR does. But what was your journey like as you discovered, like you said, the journals and the other articles of Dr. King, and is this one of the ones that inspires you the most, or is there something else?
I think that as you start to break apart his messages, this one stands out for me quite a bit. The other would be, are we moving towards chaos or community? Because again, we're heading to a precipice where we're either going to have to do what we need to do, or we're going to be back infighting, and the infighting basically destroys everything. And so Dr. King talked a lot about peace in the process of these conflicts. So civil disobedience. And so you start to see the trajectory of his writing where he's getting to this thing where it's like, I don't want people to fight back, but we need to use the government that we do have. So when we're talking about the Voting Rights Act and having to deal with voting issues all over again, understand that we never really stopped dealing with them, but we've kind of lost our footing as the people fighting against some of these oppressive types of laws. And so they're starting to build back up again. And so when you start to pull apart what he's talking about again, you see the past and the present and the future all hooked in together. And I think that it inspires me to keep digging in to figure out what it is that we need to do now.
Going back to the point that you were making earlier, one of your reporters offered tips on how to remove chains of bias. You want to share that with us?
Again, when we think in terms of things historically, like the doll test, which is something that a lot of people are familiar with, Kenneth and Mamie Clark, where they have a black doll and a white doll, and they're asking children who are roughly 3 years old, which one is the bad one, which one is the ugly one, which one is the criminal, which one is the dirty one. And the black children are constantly picking the black doll because you're being told, you're being learned bias through the news, you're being learned bias through statements that adults around you are making. And when you don't actively work against that, it just kind of feeds into our children, which means it feeds into us. And so the idea of breaking apart that bias is us learning as adults what it is that we need to say and do in front of others. It means that we need to go back and retrain and retool ourselves, because we all have certain levels of bias. It's understanding that we need to embrace our black newspapers, our black radio stations, our black teachers, our black communities as a whole, so that we're all on the same page to some extent, in ensuring that there is integrity in how we present racial issues, but also that we're steadfast and we're not only vibrant and brilliant. We have the capacity and the capability, and so the fact that we're going back again, trying to explain to children that CRT, those are bad words, but we need truth. And so truth is never really a problem unless you're looking for lies. So we just need to get to a point where once again we're reading for ourselves. The libraries are still free. I love DC Public Library because much of the research now that I used to have to go into the archives for is readily available just by having a library card and sitting at your computer.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's good to end kind of, well, we're not going to end yet, but, to really talk about the inspiring things or the words we have to say to ourselves, to keep from going into a deep funk about the situation that we find ourselves in. And that's one of the things I also liked about the issue that you did, because, you dealt with the really heavy stuff, right, that we need to deal with and remind each other about and strengthen each other from, as it relates to the message of Dr. King. But you also talked about the things that we have, got helped to get us through, and that's music. And you called it the key of change. I mean, songs, timeless songs. Share some of those with us that just.
Well, the whole concept of this came about is one of the writers, Lindiwe Vilakasi, and I were talking about just different songs that are considered civil rights songs or human rights songs. And she is initially, her family's from South Africa. So we talked about the song Sinzenena, which is a South African, it is their answer to We Shall Overcome. And it's been around since the 1950s. And it's just one of those things that when you hear it, it breaks you into tears. So we kept saying, what are the things that inspired us? It may have brought the tears, but it brought resolution. It made us feel like, we need to fight on. And it is the song that's still played now, and at funerals for folks. But basically is asking, what did we do? Why are we being persecuted because of our skin? And so I thought it was amazing. But then we started looking at all of these thousands and thousands of songs over the years that have inspired people to go forward. And when you consider that in many instances, you have people facing dogs and fire hoses and all types of things, their lives were in danger. But these songs, the songs of which you heard first, even before you heard their footsteps. So it was something that was inspiring them. It was something that was fueling their spirits to go forward. And so we thought that we would pick some of the songs, and we had to try and narrow it down for space, but we want folks to go online, once these are posted, and just add your songs to those. We love to have video clips of you, talking about you being inspired by different songs that are helping you to get over, even in the midst of COVID, and you're stuck inside and folks are just kind of feeling out of sorts. These are the types of things that help us pull through. So I thought it was important that we add that to it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did, because you certainly did. Just looking at the names, Nina Simone, I wish I knew wish I knew now, it would feel, wish I knew how it would feel to be free. And Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, and the Staple Singers, Respect Yourself, and so many others that you have listed. It just sort of made me want to go try to create a playlist, which is what you're talking about,
Yes.
us doing online. So I just want to thank you again for producing this issue and coming up with some, I think, different ways of helping us to honor Dr. King and the people who helped in and continue to help, to keep civil rights at the forefront of American democracy. So I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All
You
right,
too.
we'll talk soon.
All right.
All righty. Our young winners are here and they're in school. So I got to get them back to class. Chevy reminds me, they got to go, they got to go. And so we certainly want to get on who are the winners of the Marion Barry Youth Leadership Institute essay contest that was produced by the Marion Barry Youth Leadership Alumni Association. And so you all had to write about the theme is voting the vehicle for effective change. And so I want to congratulate each one of you. And I'm going to start. Let's see, who do I want to start with? I think I'll start with my brothers here, Kai and Cole. How are you all?
Good.
Great.
Great, great, great. Tell me quickly, one, why did you decide to participate in the essay contest and, what you wrote about?
We decided to participate in the voting contest to show people why we should vote and why it's important.
Cole?
Also because just so we can get the experience about it and teach people for generations to come about voting and how it can move us forward, but how it can also move us backwards.
You all did some sensational essays, and I know people were listening and putting comments in the chat about how you overwhelmed them with your really thoughtful messages. Amari, let's go to you really quick. Where do you go to school?
At Jefferson Middle School Academy.
Okay, all right. If you back up a little bit, we can see your face because we're just seeing right now your nose and your lips. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you participate?
I participated because my mom also wanted me to do this, so I know about history more and why voting is important to us all.
So what did you learn while you were putting this together?
I learned that voting is important because it helps us make a change through our lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did you work on this? Did you have to do research? I mean, are you a writer? Do you like to write anyway?
I would mostly draw. I prefer drawing more than writing. But
Okay.
yeah, I did have to do research on it to make sure that that I was actually correct about it and see if it was right or wrong.
Wonderful. Okay, and it's good that your mom helped you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know she did. Amari, have you finished? Amari, have you finished? Is that how it went?
Yeah, pretty much.
I can imagine. Charlie, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. Now, what school do you go to?
I go to schools at Walls High School.
All right. And what grade?
I'm in 9th grade.
Fantastic. And I'm going to ask you the same question. Why did you decide to participate in the essay contest?
Yeah, I decided to participate because when I realized that it was about voting, I realized that I didn't know that much about why we should vote. I always just thought, it's my civic duty. I'm going to vote when I'm older anyway. But I never really went into why I should vote, which is what I really went in depth about in my essay. So
There you go.
Okay, and you did. What did you give us a sense of what your conclusion of your essay? What did you come? What was your final message?
So my conclusion was that everybody should be introduced to the idea of voting at a young age because we learn most of our life skills at home from our parents. So I concluded that it was important to know, number one, how your tax dollars were being spent, and I emphasized the fact that when you vote, you have a bigger impact on your life than you think you're making, and also it's important to start at home young, learning about voting.
Interesting. That's fantastic. Kimry, I'm coming to you next. Kimry Hughes the third. If anybody has been in DC for any amount of time, we know that name. And we're certainly glad to have you with us. And you tell us what school you go to in your grade.
I go to Maurice J. McDonough High School, and I am in ninth grade.